You walk into the coffee shop, tap your phone against a little plastic square, and a flat white is yours. No coins, no paper. Nothing physical changed hands at all. A number in one account got smaller, a number in another got bigger, and everyone agreed that was enough. You didn't think about it once. But what you just did, trading a thing that doesn't physically exist for a thing you can hold, is the strangest habit our species ever picked up. And for almost all of human history, it was impossible. For roughly 300,000 years, there was no such thing as money. None. If you wanted something you didn't have, there was exactly one option. Give up something you did. You want that flint blade? Hand over 3 of your fish. This is barter, and every textbook tells you it's where money came from. But barter has a problem so brutal, it almost never worked the way you think. Picture it. You've got a basket of barley and you want a goat, so you find the man with the goat. But he doesn't want barley. He wants a new axe. So now you have to find someone with an axe who happens to want barley, trade for the axe, carry it back, and pray the goat is still there. Economists call it the double coincidence of wants. Everyone has to want what the other person has at the exact same moment. It almost never lines up. So humans did something cleverer. Long before coins, they started keeping track of favors. You helped me build my shelter, I owe you. Anthropologists who study the oldest human groups barely find pure barter at all. They find debt, memory, who owes whom. And to make those debts real, people needed something to stand in for value. Something everyone wanted that didn't rot, that you could carry. They found it on the beach. In caves in Morocco and South Africa, archaeologists have dug up tiny shell beads, drilled and worn on strings, over 100,000 years old. Not food, not tools, decoration. The first objects humans ever owned purely because they meant something. And one shell in particular would go on to run half the world, the cowrie. The cowrie became one of the longest-running currencies in human history. Small, tough, impossible to counterfeit, and beautiful. For thousands of years, it moved goods across Africa, India, and China. A single kind of money stretching across half the planet before anyone planned it. In parts of West Africa, people were still paying for goods in cowries into the 1800s, a currency that outlived empires. But shells weren't the only thing standing in for value. On the grasslands, wealth was cattle, so much so that our word pecuniary, meaning relating to money, comes from the Latin pecus, meaning livestock. Your bank account is named after a cow. In Mesopotamia, around 5,000 years ago, value was weighed in barley. The shekel, the first true unit of money we know of, didn't start as a coin. It started as a fixed weight of grain. And here's where it gets strange. To track all that grain and all those debts, the Sumerians pressed marks into wet clay. How much you owed and who you owed it to. Those marks became cuneiform, which means one of the very first things humans ever wrote. Before poetry, before history, was a receipt. Writing may have been invented just to keep the books. Then, around 2,600 years ago, in a kingdom called Lydia, and what's now Turkey, someone had the idea that changed everything. Lydia had a river, the Pactolus, that ran thick with electrum, a natural blend of gold and silver. The problem with raw metal is you have to weigh it and test its purity every single time you trade. So the Lydian kings melted it into small standardized lumps and stamped each one with a lion. A royal guarantee, this is exactly this much and exactly this pure. The world's first coins. Imagine holding one for the first time. You've spent your whole life weighing grain and haggling over goats, and now a stranger drops a small stamped disc into your palm, and you both just know what it's worth. No scale, no argument. That little piece of metal did something no shell or cow ever could. It made a total stranger's word trustworthy. Coins spread across Greece, Rome, and beyond, and for over 1,000 years, money meant metal you could bite, until China got tired of carrying it. Hauling strings of heavy copper coins around to buy anything big was miserable. So under the Tang and Song dynasties, more than 1,000 years ago, Chinese merchants started leaving their coins with a trusted house and carrying a paper note that said how much was stored. Then the government took over and printed the notes itself. Paper money. When Marco Polo saw it centuries later, he could barely believe it. Paper, worth a fortune and worth nothing, both at once. And that's the secret hiding underneath this whole story. A cowrie is just a shell. A coin is just stamped metal. A banknote is a slip of cotton and ink. None of them are worth anything on their own. They only work because you believe the next person will take them too. Money isn't a thing. It's a shared story. The biggest one humans ever told, and the only one where everyone agrees to keep pretending together. Think about that for a second. The cash in your pocket, the balance in your app, they hold up your rent, your food, your entire future, and they're made of nothing but agreement. The moment everyone stops believing, it's paper again, or not even paper. And we kept making it less real. The paper stopped being backed by gold, then the paper mostly disappeared too. Today, more than 90% of the money on Earth isn't coins or bills. It's numbers on servers, glowing on screens, blinking between banks at the speed of light. Your entire life savings might be a row of digits that no human hand has ever touched, or ever will. So here's the full picture. First, we traded the things themselves. Then we traded favors and remembered the debts. Then shells stood in for the favors. Then cattle, then barley, then weighed silver. Then someone stamped the silver and called it a coin. Then paper stood in for the coin. Then numbers stood in for the paper. Every single step, the money got less real, and somehow more powerful. And not one of those steps was planned. Nobody sat down and invented money. It just kept becoming something lighter. We started with a shell you could hold in your fist and ended with a story that only exists because a billion people agree every single morning to keep believing it. So you walk out of the coffee shop. The cup is warm and real in your hand. You paid for it with something that has no shape, no weight, no place it actually lives. A number that got smaller inside a machine you'll never see. 100,000 years ago, one of your ancestors drilled a hole in a shell because it meant something. You just did the exact same thing. You traded a story for something you can drink, and you didn't even look up.